The house was perfect. At least, that's what we thought when we first saw it. Old, yes, but charming in its own way. The kind of place that had history. Perfect for 4 broke college graduates looking to split rent and start the next chapter of their lives. The first couple of days were a blur of unpacking and excitement. We were all thrilled. Me, Jake, Sarah, and Olivia. It was our first time living together without the safety net of school, and this house was supposed to be the beginning of our adult lives. The previous owners had left in a hurry, according to the realtor. We didn't think much of it. People move for all kinds of reasons. But on the second night, things started feeling off. It began with the scratching. At first, I thought it was mice. We were out in the country a bit, after all, so I figured it made sense. It was late, and I was lying in bed when I heard it, a faint, scratching sound coming from inside the walls. I ignored it at first, pulling my blanket tighter, but the noise persisted, creeping around the room like something alive. I told myself I was just being paranoid. New places can do that to you. The next morning, I mentioned it to the others over breakfast. Jake shrugged it off, saying it was probably just the house settling. Sarah, always the skeptic, laughed, but Olivia seemed unsettled. She said she'd heard it too. We joked about it and moved on with the day, but something about the way Olivia looked at the walls bothered me. That night, the scratching was worse. This time, it wasn't just in the walls. It was under the floorboards, beneath my bed. I lay there, frozen, listening as it moved from one corner of the room to the other. I wanted to get up, tell Jake or Sarah, but fear kept me pinned to the bed. The sound was maddening, like nails scraping on wood, but muffled, almost deliberate. I finally fell asleep, out of sheer exhaustion. The next morning, Olivia didn't come down for breakfast. I knocked on her door, but got no answer. Jake and I decided to check on her, thinking maybe she'd just overslept. When we opened her door, the room was freezing, colder than the rest of the house, and Olivia was sitting on the edge of her bed, staring at the wall. She didn't move, didn't even acknowledge us. Her skin was pale, almost grey, her eyes wide and vacant. It was like she wasn't even there. "Olivia?" I asked, my voice shaky. She finally looked at us, but her expression was blank. "It's in the walls," she whispered. "It's been watching us." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. Jake stepped forward, trying to snap her out of it, but she just kept repeating the same phrase over and over. "It's in the walls." That night, we heard more than just scratching. There was whispering, faint but unmistakable. It echoed through the house, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. I could hear it in my room, in the hallway, even in the bathroom. By the 4th night, we were all too scared to sleep. Jake insisted it was our imaginations playing tricks, but I could see the fear in his eyes. None of us wanted to admit it, but the house felt wrong. The whispers were louder now, angry. And Olivia, she wasn't the same. None of us would be after that night. The house seemed perfect, a classic 2-story, white with green shutters, nestled at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. It had that new beginnings vibe, exactly what I needed after the breakup. The real estate agent gushed about its charm, the large yard, and the attic, which she called a bonus storage space. I didn't think much about it at the time. I was just glad to finally have a place to call my own. The first few days were uneventful. I unpacked, arranged the furniture, and even set up my little office downstairs. I was getting used to the creaks and groans that every old house makes, though one night I heard something strange, a soft thud from above. My heart leaped, but I brushed it off as my imagination running wild. A few days later, I found strange things in the house. A spoon out of place, a chair slightly moved, the back door unlocked when I was sure I had locked it. I started doubting myself. Maybe I was just stressed from the move. Then it escalated. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a scraping sound, like nails dragging against wood. It was coming from the ceiling, the attic. My breath caught, and I stared up, listening. The sound stopped for a moment, then resumed, quieter this time, as if someone knew I was awake. I convinced myself it was nothing, but the unease gnawed at me. The next morning, I grabbed a flashlight and steeled myself to check the attic. The narrow staircase groaned as I climbed. The attic was small, dusty, and full of boxes left by the previous owners. I saw nothing unusual at first glance. Feeling a mix of relief and foolishness, I decided to leave. But then I noticed something in the far corner, a pile of blankets, crumpled in a way that looked disturbingly like a makeshift bed. I froze. There was an empty soda can beside the pile, and the air had a faint, sour smell. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to inch closer. A bundle of clothes, which were not mine, was neatly stacked beside the blankets. Someone had been living up here. I bolted downstairs, locked the attic door, and called the police. They came, searched the house, and found no one. But the officer said something that stuck with me. These things happen more often than you'd think. Squatters, you know. Sometimes they come back though. That night, I hardly slept. Every sound felt magnified. Every creak could have been him returning. Around 3 a.m., I heard the floor above me shift. Not the gentle settling of an old house. No, this was a deliberate footstep. I lay paralyzed, staring at the ceiling. Then, slowly, the attic door creaked open. I gripped my phone, dialing 911 with shaking hands. The footsteps grew closer, descending the stairs. "Someone's in my house," I whispered to the operator. "He's in the attic. He's coming down." Just as I heard the police sirens, I heard the front door slam shut. I never heard or saw this person again. I still don't know who was living in my house to this day, but I always make sure I lock my doors at night. When I first saw the house nestled deep in the woods, I was enchanted by its rustic charm. The old Victorian stood alone, surrounded by towering pines and oaks that whispered secrets in the wind. It was as if the house was a relic of another era, untouched and timeless. I had recently moved to this rural town, seeking solace and a fresh start after a turbulent year. The house seemed perfect, offering both the seclusion I craved and the potential for a new beginning. The first few days were idyllic. The air was crisp. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of birds. Inside, the house was a treasure trove of vintage elegance, original woodwork, intricate moldings, and creaky floorboards that sang with every step. I spent hours restoring the old furniture and imagining the lives that had unfolded within these walls. But as the days wore on, an unsettling feeling began to creep in. It started subtly, a cold draft in rooms with no windows open, the faintest whisper of footsteps when I was alone. The woods outside, while beautiful, had a way of making me feel isolated, amplifying every sound and shadow. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and darkness enveloped the house, I decided to explore the old spare room. The room was cluttered with old trunks and forgotten mementos. I shuffled through the items, each one telling a story of a life long gone. In the corner, I discovered an old wooden chest, its surface covered in dust and cobwebs. Curiosity piqued, I pried it open. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs and letters. The photos were full of strange gatherings in the woods. The letters, written in a shaky hand, spoke of a family plagued by an unseen menace, their words growing increasingly desperate as they described eerie occurrences and a feeling of being watched. A chill ran down my spine as I read the final letter. It was dated just before the family vanished. The writer spoke of a malevolent presence that lurked in the shadows, something that had been with them since they moved into the house. They had tried to leave, but were always drawn back. The letter ended with a haunting plea. If you find this, leave before it's too late. That night, I struggled to sleep. Every creak of the house seemed amplified. Every gust of wind outside sounded like whispering voices. I lay in bed, my heart pounding, staring at the ceiling as the darkness pressed in on me. It felt as if the house was alive, its walls breathing and shifting. Around midnight, I heard a sound on my bedroom door. My breath caught in my throat. The sound came in a rhythmic pattern, growing louder and more insistent. I mustered the courage to open the door, only to find nothing but an empty hallway stretching into the darkness. The next morning, I packed my things. I couldn't stay another night in the house that felt so suddenly alien. As I drove away, the trees seemed to close in behind me, their branches reaching out as if to keep me from leaving. I looked back once, seeing the house silhouetted against the early morning light. It stood there, silent and watchful, a dark secret nestled deep in the woods, waiting for its next inhabitant.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and check out my other horror stories on the screen now. And until next time, sleep tight.